All right, well, good evening, everyone. We're going to get this started in just a couple minutes. Waiting for a few more people to join here. All right, so I'm going to get things started off so we can stay on time tonight. So welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Steiner. I coordinate the VLAP program, as most of you probably know, and for those that don't, welcome. Thank you for joining us for the first part of the 2021 VLAP Workshop. The second session, part one, will be held on May 24th. That's your lake ecology and lake sampling refresher. And part two of the workshop will start with the aquatic exotic species refresher on June 7th and end with the Cyanobacteria refresher on June 14th. You can register for all of these events by going to the VLAP webpage. So there are links to registration from there. So tonight really is a special occasion as we've been on hiatus for a couple of years. So if any of you can remember, in 2019, we had to cancel the workshop due to electrical maintenance issues. And then of course, 2020 due to COVID. So we're just so happy to be able to host this event virtually this year. However, this virtual event certainly won't replace our in-person workshop gatherings in the future. So we look forward to hopefully having an in-person workshop in 2022. So while you're waiting and watching tonight, feel free to introduce yourself and share a favorite VLAP memory in the chat box. I also uploaded in the handouts section what has been shared so far in the group card celebrating VLAP's 35th anniversary. If you'd like to contribute, you have until the end of July. So next, I'll share with you how to find the chat and the handouts. So yes, a bit of housekeeping for tonight. So you are automatically muted. Your webcam is not shared. So feel free to kick back and relax because we can't see what you're doing. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the VLAP website or our YouTube channel at a later date. If you have a comment or a question, let's see, you can use the chat function. So if I get my laser pointer here, the chat function is here. So you can expand this little arrow, type a message in here. It will go to everyone. So if you have any questions or comments, chat right in here. So if you're not familiar with the rest of GoToWebinar, your control panel looks like this, or should look similar to this right here. If you're having trouble with audio, this audio button right here, you can switch between computer audio and phone audio by expanding this box. Note that if you choose the phone option, you will need to enter your PIN, which should have been included in your registration. As mentioned previously, there is a handout being shared, and you can find that by expanding this handout button right here. And then finally, the arrow at the top here, this can hide and expand your control panel. So if you don't want to see it, just click this arrow and it will disappear for you. So tonight we have Dave Niels presenting the welcome, and then I'll provide updates before the awards ceremony. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Dave.
All right. Can you hear me, Sarah?
I can hear you.
And you can see my screen?
I cannot see your screen, but hold on, I just ended.
While Sarah's working through that, good evening, everybody. It's It's great to have you here tonight. I know there's people out there. I can't see you, and I think you can see me. So welcome. I'm David Niels. I'm the Chief Aquatic Biologist at the state of New Hampshire, Department of Environmental Services, and I'm also the Director of the Jody Limnology Center. I'm very, very pleased to serve in that position and happy to be here tonight. Let me try this one more time. How are we doing there?
I see it, Dave.
Excellent. All right. So I'm going to close my laptop. My camera's going to go away. You won't see my ugly mug anymore, so everybody be very happy about that. Can everybody still see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So once again, welcome everybody to the 2021 VLAP Workshop. God bless Sarah for sticking through this stuff. I was talking to her earlier today, and she's planned workshops every year since 2019. So finally we get to do a workshop tonight. And I'm really happy to be able to give you a few updates on things that we've done over the past year or so in the Jody Limnology Center. But what I'd really like to do, I've got about half an hour of time here, is dedicate about 20 minutes of that time to really celebrating you guys, our volunteers that work so hard to help us out at DES. So we'll start with the updates. So I know there's a lot of writing here, but I'll slowly work my way through it. One of the really exciting things that was completed this year was a status and trends report of our lakes and ponds in the state of New Hampshire. And that was no small effort, and everybody within the biology sections, Sarah, Amy, Kirsten Hugger, and several other people really put a ton of work into this. However, I will tell you guys tonight that you guys really contributed the lion's share of the data to this report. It is in large based on VLAP data, and that's really exciting. And this is something that has been a long time coming, and probably really haven't ever done a statewide comprehensive report like this before. And we really focused on 4 primary questions. And those are, what are the current conditions in our lakes in New Hampshire with respect to all our statewide data? And then we wanted to know whether things were stable, improving, or worsening over time, that is, trends over time. And then how do these current conditions compare with data from the recent past? So something like a 5-year period between now and 5 years ago. And then there's also a really nice summary of trends. Getting questions here. I want to make sure that I'm not missing something. I'll make sure everybody can hear me. So, all right, good. And then there's a really nice summary about the regional trends. So you can go into this report and look at water bodies by various regions. So very quickly, the summary of things we found, and a lot of these probably will come to no surprise to you guys because you work so hard on monitoring your lakes and ponds all the time, was specific conductance was a parameter that has shown some pretty dramatic increases. In fact, about 80% of our water bodies increased in specific conductance over the last 5 years. So that's sort of that short-term versus longer-term data comparison. And really, again, that wasn't very surprising to us, but this documents it very well. The other thing that was kind of unique was that water clarity had decreased in our water bodies significantly over this time period, but really it didn't coincide with an increase in chlorophyll. So stay tuned on that one. There's a condition called lake browning that we're tracking, and certainly we're going to keep working on that. That's somewhat related to climate change. So we'll continue to track that, but that's a very unique finding from this report. One thing that you guys spend a lot of time and money doing is monitoring phosphorus. Those are our nutrients, our limiting nutrient in our lakes and ponds. And what we found was that total phosphorus, for the large part, was unchanged in our lakes and ponds in the state of New Hampshire for most of our lakes, but not all. And where it was bad, it was pretty bad. But those were very few and far between. Speaking of climate change, it was very evident that water temperature had increased over time, and that also coincided with, I think you guys have seen the slide before, earlier ice out. And most of you have also started contributing as part of your volunteer work to Sarah's ice out tracker. It's actually, ice out is about 2 weeks earlier than it has been over the period of record. Also, we looked at, we have a beach monitoring program, and the number of beaches with fecal advisories has increased pretty dramatically from about 2003 on, from 11% of our beaches to 43% of our beaches. And then lastly, as Amy is very aware of, the number of water bodies with invasive plant species has increased from 48 to 89, and that's starting in 2000. One of the really nice things about this report is if you go to the appendix of the report and you're interested in looking into how your particular water body, the lake that you study, is doing, there's a very nice summary for each of the VLAP water bodies in the appendix. So I encourage you guys to go check that out. The bottom there is the web address where you can find this report. And certainly this will be on the recording, and Sarah, I'm sure will send this out if you haven't seen it before so that you guys can all go look into it further. That's a really monumental piece of work that folks in the biology section contributed to, and I'm really excited about that. One other thing that we've started doing or have been doing for the past several years is some ice out sampling. And this is really important to do if you're going to do any lake modeling, because you want to get out there while all of the water is still completely mixed before stratification sets in. And we did this on 4 water bodies this spring: Winnisquam Lake, Silver Lake down in Hollis, Country Pond in Kingston, and Lake Canassaca and Molten Borough. And the reason we focused on these water bodies is they're all either actively working on a watershed-based plan or pursuing the development of a watershed-based plan. And this is really critical in developing a watershed-based plan that is doing some modeling to understand the nutrient dynamics in the lakes. And that there is our longtime biologist, Walter Henderson, out on one of the most spectacular days on Lake Winnisquam that I think I've ever experienced. It was just amazing. So one other large project that we've really focused on over the past 7 or 8 months or so, and that is preparing for an alum treatment into Nippo Lake in Barrington. This is very much a demonstration project. And why are we doing this, and what is it? Well, we're applying aluminum compounds for controlling the internal load of phosphorus into Nippo Lake. And if you can see on the right-hand photograph there, that is basically what Nippo Lake has looked like at some point during the season over about the last 8 out of 10 years. So they've had cyanobacteria blooms very, very regularly. And what we found through the watershed-based planning process was that about 34% of the phosphorus load to this lake comes from the bottom sediments. And alum is basically exactly what it is. It's applying aluminum. And the reason that you do that is that it binds the phosphorus on the lakes in the that's bound up in the lake sediments. So the way it works is we'll be treating about 56 acres of the lake. That is any area of the lake that's greater than 15 feet deep. That's about 2/3 of the lake. The chemicals will be applied from a barge. It kind of looks like this one down in the lower left-hand photograph, and injected to a depth of a couple of meters or so. The aluminum that's being applied to the lake basically floats down to the bottom of the lake and forms a flock on the bottom, and that binds with the phosphorus and keeps it there rather than allowing it to be mobilized into the water column. The treatment, it's actually planned to occur next week, at least part of it. We're going to do a pilot treatment followed by 2 additional phases. And in total, that's going to take 9 days to treat the lake. The really nice thing about applying alum is that it kind of is a long-term solution in that it should last about 10 to 20 years. But it's not cheap. It's going to cost about $150,000 or so to do this. The money for this project is coming from federal funds or from private funds around the Nippo Lake Association. And this isn't the first time that we've done this in New Hampshire. Folks that have been participating in VLAP may remember, or if you're from Kezar Lake, that was treated back in 1985. So this has been a long time since we've done this. In fact, we don't really have anybody on staff that has directly done alum applications before. So this will be the first time for most of us, and we're really excited to be able to do this. I thought I would also spend a little bit of time very quickly here just talking about cyanobacteria. Folks are obviously very aware of cyanobacteria around the state now, and give you a quick update on the status. This plot right here basically shows the number of advisory days on the y-axis of the plot over time going back to about 2003. So anytime there's a severe cyanobacteria bloom, we can issue an advisory on the lake, and you can see the gradual trend has been towards an increase, not surprising. And in 2021, we had a total of 680 advisory days on our lakes across the state of New Hampshire. That was on 23 separate advisories, but did not include what we now are calling alerts. These are from smaller blooms that don't necessarily meet the threshold to issue an advisory, but nevertheless get reported to us. So we are seeing an ever increasing trend of cyanobacteria blooms around the state. And we will update this regularly. Amanda McQuaid is our harmful algal bloom program coordinator. She does a fantastic job, and credit on this plot here goes to Kirsten Hugger. So that's kind of it for my updates from the Jody Connor Limnology section. Of course, there was a lot of other things that we did over the course of the year, but those were kind of some of the highlights. What I'd really like to do now is something that I know Sarah and I were really looking forward to doing with you guys in 2020 and just didn't have a chance to because of COVID. And that is really celebrate you guys, the volunteers that have worked so hard with the VLAP program over the last 35 years, and the excellence that you guys have contributed to monitoring our lakes and ponds. And over the next several minutes or so, I'd like to just give a little brief historical perspective. Some of the benefits that you guys have allowed and contributed to within the Department of Environmental Services, and then a nice reflection on all the great things that you guys have done, including some just fantastic photographs. Sarah, if you didn't know, keeps tons of photographs that you all have contributed. So apologies for any lack of photo credits, but most of them were contributed by you and makes for a fantastic retrospective. So just to give you an idea, I have a quick timeline here of what VLAP is and was and when it was created. It was created in 1985, so we're celebrating, well, 36 years now. And in thinking about things, Ronald Reagan had just, it was his second year of his second term, so that's kind of going back a ways. By 1989, VLAP had 70 lakes in the program. And you can sort of see the timeline here. What we all do now is order on Amazon, and that was in about 1994. The first workshop occurred in 2001. And then, of course, my favorite baseball team actually won the World Series finally in 2004. In 2008, VLAP was presented with the EPA Environmental Merit Award, and that's just a fantastic recognition. Not for DES by any means, but for the work that you guys contributed to the program. I mean, that award really belongs to you guys. And then, of course, the 2011 award would be without Siri now. And then since 2017, we've had steady 175 lakes that have participated in VLAP, and that's just a fantastic way to keep track of not just the individual lakes that you guys are all interested in, but provides just an amazing data set for the state, across the state, and keeping track of our lakes and ponds. And then, of course, over the past year or so, we've all hunkered down, and hopefully we're getting over this crazy pandemic that we've been dealing with for the past over a year. And just some quick facts here. You guys basically submit to us about 15,000 water quality samples or produce 15,000 results every year. That's over 500 sample events and about 3,700 hours of volunteer time. Just amazing work that you guys do. The majority of the assessments that we do, those are the formal assessments that we send to EPA that we're required to send to EPA on lakes in New Hampshire are actually come from VLAP data. So just a quick acknowledgement to the fantastic work you do. We're approaching 400,000 sample results from the VLAP program. That's just an amazing number, and kudos to you guys for all that hard work. Just a little more recognition of all the things that you have accomplished. 90% of the lakes in VLAP now have 10 or more years worth of data, many with 20 plus years. That's just an amazing long-term data set. The data is used over and over and over again, in things like total maximum daily loads, TMDLs, watershed-based management plans, which I talked about earlier, and water quality assessments. The support for VLAP has been so tremendous that you actually changed state law. VLAP is now written into our RSAs and also has a dedicated position sitting there, which is really, really good for the longevity of VLAP. It's one of the very few volunteer programs in the country that gets state funding, and that's amazing. The number of parameters that are monitored through the VLAP program is second to none around the country. So you guys monitor 10 different parameters, which none of the other volunteer programs, lake programs, do that many. And then, of course, we have a fantastic satellite laboratory at the Colby-Story College where you guys contribute a lot of samples. It makes, I think, things a lot easier to get the data analyzed. So these are just the direct outcomes of some of the direct outcomes of your hard work. There's many other indirect benefits, and I'd like to talk about those in a little bit. So just a thumbs up to all you guys. Fantastic job out there. Amazing stuff. So this is sort of the challenging part of the presentation for me. From the beginning, folks that have been involved with VLAP for a long time know that VLAP had a very, very special person. And of course, that's Jody Connor. Jody was a visionary. He could see exactly what needed to be done with our lakes and ponds from a long ways out. And VLAP was one of those visions that Jody had. He could see that people wanted to gather additional data on our lakes and ponds, and could see that it would provide a massive benefit to understanding how our lakes and ponds are behaving and just the way we understand what they're doing. So not only was he was a visionary, but Jody was an exceptional scientist and limnologist. You could ask Jody anything about a lake, a pond, and he would have an answer. Just a fantastic limnologist. He could analyze water quality samples, identify plants, identify things under a microscope, do lake modeling, you name it, Jody could do it. But I think most importantly, the thing that Jody was an advocate. And that's not just to our lakes and ponds, but to you guys, the volunteers, the people that live around our lakes or love our lakes. He could see the passion that everybody has about what a fantastic resource we have in the state of New Hampshire. And he spoke for everybody within the state and provided just an amazing path forward for the way we research our lakes and ponds in the state of New Hampshire, the way they're managed. Just an amazing advocate for what we do. But what many of you may not know is beyond VLAP, Jody did so much more. Amy, who's on the line here with us tonight, knows very, very well. He was instrumental in getting our exotic species program started. For those of you that don't know, we also have a Clean Vessel Act and did boat inspections for a long time. We haven't done those for a few years now, but we do have several pump out facilities at marinas around the state. We receive federal funding every year to run the CVA program. That was all due to Jody. The beach monitoring program that we have, again, that was a Jody thing that we get federal funding for every year. Cyanobacteria monitoring, he knew that was important. He also has worked with you guys on getting many fish specimens contributed to the state of New Hampshire for the analysis of mercury. So we have a really fantastic data set on that. One thing that you guys probably don't know, that we also do a pool and spa program. Yes, we actually monitor pools and spas around the state of New Hampshire. Again, Jody was instrumental in getting that put in place. Like I said, Jody's experience went way beyond just the regular daily activities, but he could do fantastic research on specific water bodies. That's lake diagnostic feasibility studies, and several of us at DES have participated in those in the past. And many of you that knew Jody knew that he spent hours and hours of time at late night public meetings and doing outreach. Just a fantastic individual. Regrettably, we lost Jody in 2001 or 2011, I'm sorry. And this plaque here is up on Kezar Lake, where the alum treatment was actually, our last alum treatment occurred. And we miss Jody every single day, but we pay homage to all the good work that he's done or did, and thank him for his work in the VLAP program. Well, of course, discussion of VLAP would go nowhere without your fearless leader, and that's Sarah Steiner, a fantastic employee at the state of New Hampshire. She's been the coordinator of VLAP since 2007. She's responsible for an analysis and reporting of over 200,000 of those sample results that I talked about, of the 400,000, and amazingly 2,000 VLAP reports. I can't even imagine cranking out those reports, and they're just fantastic reports. She's amazingly passionate, exceptionally creative, and a Great Lakes scientist. She does a great job communicating with you guys, I know, and teaches everybody anything they want to know about aquatic ecology. And again, just like Jody, lots and lots of extra time committed to VLAP. And I mean, FAR picture on the right there says it all. I mean, Sarah's commitment to the VLAP program doesn't stop anywhere. In fact, she wore somebody else's pants home from a VLAP sampling event once. So kudos to you, Sarah. Thank you for all your hard work. Just an amazing job. But of course, none of VLAP would be possible without you, the volunteers. You guys do it all. You take the time. You travel to the laboratories to drop off your samples. You offer up your boats. You pay for samples to be processed. You coordinate amongst yourself. You're just so dedicated. Here's just some of this nice pictures that we have saved over the years, doing tributary sampling, you know, reaching out with a pole there to collect water samples, or just wading around in the river. Now, I'm not quite sure the lower right hand here. If I were doing volunteer sampling, I'm not sure I would pick a foul weather day to do it, but again, you guys are super dedicated to this program, and we appreciate all that you do. It goes way beyond that. Here's just a very nice collection of people trying to wrestle with our integrated tube sampling device. Anybody that's done VLAP know this is a way to get sort of a column of water sampled, and I thought this was just a great example of the things you guys do. I call it snake sampling. You kind of look like you're wrestling with a giant python there. Some great photos from the past. And notice, as we go through these photos, please notice everybody's always got a smile on their face. And not only that, I think for me, one of the most important things is that you guys involve the younger generation. And gosh, is that important, training these young biologists out on your boats, collecting the water samples. And again, nothing goes, you know, far enough in teaching the younger generation about the value of keeping our lakes clean and in good condition. But you guys, you know, you have a whole different variety of ways that you like to do sampling. Sometimes you like to work in pairs. Of course, the captain here is the dog overseeing the activities, and his first mate actually doing the work. But sometimes you just need some private time on the lake and like to go out alone and do the sampling. I can think of nothing better than just floating around on a beautiful day on the lake, collecting some water. But then on occasions, you guys turn it into a state job like we do at DES, and you have 5 people out there to make quicker work of the process. But what I think is most is really, really important as well is it brings people together on the lake, people that you may not know and lived around the lake, and you share this common interest about protecting the lake and keeping track of its water quality, and understand the value of the stewardship of the lake. And again, notice everybody in these pictures are smiling. Just a great example of what can be done when people come together, work for a common interest. And VLAP has a whole bunch of benefits that go well beyond just doing the sampling. And I just thought these pictures were really, really fantastic. From photography like this, I mean, you guys send us pictures all the time, from pictures of wildflowers to snapping turtles. So of course, the most common picture we get is of loons, but you send us pictures of your cats. I mean, gosh, you even send us pictures of mites and eagles. Just fantastic way to get to learn the various other things that are out there or around the lake, rather than just the water quality samples that you collect. Just a great appreciation for our lake environments. And then, of course, the sampling vessels are critical to getting this work done. And these are some of the common sampling vessels that you guys typically use. The pontoon boats, they sort of seem the safest, although Joe here looks like he's about to step over the edge, so we got to be careful there. My personal favorite are canoes. They're always, they're quiet and they always work. So, but then ski boats, that's a nice option too, because you can get out to the center of the lake quickly. And of course, they tend to provide a little more comfort. But then, of course, you get these people that have to have these alternative vessels to collect their samples, like paddle boats, blow-up rafts, and even a tugboat at one point was used to do some VLAP sampling. So kudos to you guys who got creative with your sampling options in terms of vessels. So some of the things that you guys may or may not know are all the additional benefits that your hard work has contributed to over the years. And that is supporting our Weed Watchers program. So many of you were involved, not just in VLAP, but you're out there keeping track of invasive species that may occur on your lakes from time to time, and is critical to providing early detection for any invasions that occur. Also, you're out there all the time, so you're keeping track of cyanobacteria blooms. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm so happy to have a dedicated cyanobacteria program now that you guys can utilize at your disposal to report any cyanobacteria blooms that you see. Not only that, you've contributed many fish, like I mentioned, over the years to the analysis of mercury in fish tissue. And these contributed to a fantastic report done in 2018, which tracks the status and trends of mercury in fish tissue. And the massive number of samples that you send us really helped justify the construction of a modern laboratory. On the left-hand side here, you'll see what we called the Limnology Center back in 2001. That was the Limnology Center that I was first introduced to. And you could just see how cramped it was here. And no, I don't think this guy is flexing his biceps over here. Maybe, but anyways, we used to work in this very cramped space. And over here on the right, you'll see what the Jody Limnology Center looks like in 2021. It's really just an exceptional facility. It provides us all the modern tools that we need to process samples quickly and make sure the quality of that data is as high as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, you're contributing to long-term data sets all the time. Again, I'll put a plug in for that report that I discussed earlier, and the fantastic plots and charts that are included therein. The data that you collect provides long-term annual data on individual water bodies that is amazingly valuable. We do some other lake sampling, but typically those are done for just 1 or 2 or 3 years at a time. We don't have long-term data sets that span 10 or more years on most of our water bodies. Something that you probably don't notice or know about is the work that you guys do is actually help train about 75 young professionals in the field of environmental science. And by that, I mean our interns. So every year we have at least 2 interns that are dedicated to the VLAP program. We bring them in, they come in like this and they wear their nice office clothes, and about a week later, they look like that. They're out in the field, they've got their PFDs on, they've learned how to use a plankton net, they've learned how to use a Kemmerer bottle, and they even have some fun out there with you guys, creating creative pictures like this. And I should mention that many of these interns have gone on to permanent employment at DES, including your fearless leader, Sarah Steiner, who, yes, did start as an intern. And that's her working as an intern back in probably 2001 or so, back at the old Jody Limnology Center. So again, your participation in VLAP has led to some fantastic young professionals out there that are trained in the field of aquatic ecology. So for all that, I know I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure Sarah does as well. And I want to congratulate each of you on making VLAP one of the most successful volunteer monitoring programs in the country. Thank you very much. And again, I appreciate you guys sharing some of your time with me this evening, and look forward to working with you guys in the future.
All right, Dave, we have a few questions for you that came up during your presentation. The first one is, can you talk about what a watershed-based plan is?
Sure. Yeah, so a watershed-based plan is basically a comprehensive effort that looks at the various types of pollution that's entered into a lake, as well as the solutions for remedying those pollution sources. That's kind of the best way to put it. There is a formal recipe that our 319 grant program manages within the Watershed-Based Bureau, that is a whole prescription on the various elements that need to be included in a watershed-based plan. So it basically looks at the entire watershed and the factors and land uses that are going on within the watershed and contributing to the status of a lake or pond.
Thanks, Dave. The next one is, can you tell us what the time interval is on the trend report that you talked about at the beginning of your presentation?
So it starts in 1991 and covers the period of time through 2018, and looks at all of the lake data that we had in our database from that time period.
Okay, and the next one is, does alum treatment have any negative impacts on wildlife?
Yes, well, we will find out next Tuesday. It is a very, very benign treatment. The largest concern is the aluminum that is being put in. If the pH isn't controlled correctly, it can be harmful to fish. The way alum treatments occur is an application of 2 chemicals. One is more of an acid-based substance, one is a buffer substance. So there's a very delicate balance on the prescription of the ratio of those 2 chemicals to try to keep the pH within the range where aluminum is not toxic to fish.
Okay, thanks, Dave. That wraps up the questions.
All right. I'm going to stop. Sure. Yes, I think, do you guys have that back now?
Yes, we see Sarah's slides.
Excellent. Okay. Wow.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amy. And Dave, thank you so much. That was such a really great walk down memory lane. And I just know that we all have so many wonderful memories of Jody, the program, and we're just really certainly grateful for our volunteers and your contributions over the past 35 years. So now I'm going to try to go over some VLAP updates, and then we can move into the annual awards presentation. So I'll just provide a brief recap of the 2018 to 2020 monitoring seasons, touch a little bit on climate history and predictions, and then briefly talk about what's new and what to expect in 2021. So Dave touched on this briefly. So the total number of lakes in the program is holding steady, right around 175. However, the number of sampling events that we're conducting continues to increase, and that's really that purple bar that you see that keeps on moving up. In 2019, we actually saw the greatest number of sampling events conducted, totaling over 450. So basically, that means that the same number of lakes are sampling, but you're sampling more frequently in the summer, so you're doing more. And so that's extremely impressive considering most of this occurs in just 3 months out of the year. And obviously we saw that number decline in 2020, but the numbers were still impressive, and you managed to conduct 70% of the normal number of sampling events. And again, we expect this to improve in 2021 as more people start sampling. So it goes without saying that an increase in sampling events means that more samples are collected and analyzed. In 2019, we saw the greatest number of analytical results generated in over 20 years, and that number was right around 16,500 results generated. So that means, not only are you busy in the field collecting samples, but our laboratories are also busier than ever analyzing samples. And that's not just the Jody Connor Limnology Center, that also is the Colby-Seward College Laboratory. That is a partnership between the Lake Sunapee Protective Association and Colby-Seward College. So Terrico is doing an amazing job managing that laboratory. So again, we saw this number decrease in 2020, but that's to be expected. And Dave also touched upon this briefly in terms of looking at trends over time. So what do we do with all those results that you generate, right? So we look at water quality trends over time. So you may recall Dave talked about the New Hampshire Lake Trend Report. In contrast with the Lake Trend Report that grouped trends observed by a lake's trophic classification, VLAP does look at trends at individual lakes regardless of their trophic classification. So in 2020, we were able to analyze trends at 90% of VLAP lakes participating, and that means that those lakes have 10 or more consecutive years of data collection, which allows us to look at those long-term trends. What do those trends tell us? Well, pretty much the same summary that Dave gave you about trends. So 95% of our lakes have stable or improving trends in chlorophyll A or algal abundance, epilimnetic phosphorus levels, and also pH levels. So the improving pH trends, that supports really the measured recovery of New Hampshire's lakes from historical acid precipitation. So we're actually measuring that in our VLAP lakes. And we also continue to see about 20% of lakes with worsening trends in lake clarity or transparency. Again, as Dave mentioned, it's not being driven by algal growth. We feel that this is further support that some of these lakes are becoming darker or more tea-colored over time, which is a process referred to as lake browning. And finally, and unfortunately, 50% of our lakes continue to exhibit worsening trends in conductivity levels over time. Most of this, but not all of this, is likely attributed to road salting. So next, I want to touch on historical climate information and predictions for the summer, what that might actually mean for water quality at our lakes. So one note here, I want to continue to encourage you to submit ice in and ice out information to us. So this information allows us to better understand how the changing climate is affecting periods of ice cover, which can have implications on water quality as well as winter recreation on our lakes. As you can see here, the past 2 winters, we've seen an average of about 14 weeks of ice cover, with some lakes experiencing as little as 9 weeks and as much as 16 weeks of ice cover. So although we only have data going back to about 2017 for ice in and ice out, we can see that the past 2 seasons, there was roughly 3 weeks less of ice cover than that measured in just 2017. So I want you to keep this in mind as I go over the next few slides and how these climate variables may impact our lakes in both summer and the winter. So as you are aware, the state experienced a drought in 2020 that was, for the most part, still present for some of the state as we headed into 2021. So that's the image on your far left there. And this is also, as you can see in these images, the yellow and tan portions. The yellow indicates abnormally dry conditions, while the tan portions indicate moderate drought conditions. So heading into February, we saw areas along the Vermont border change to abnormally dry conditions. And then heading into May, we see that a large portion of the western part of the state moved into moderate drought conditions, while the rest of the state is considered abnormally dry. So sort of what's driving those drought conditions? What's going on with precipitation? So here we see on the left-hand side the percent of normal precipitation received between November 2020 and April 2021. And on the right-hand side, we see the precipitation departure from normal. So the tan, brown, and orange areas generally mean less, while green means more. So the takeaway here is really it's been dry. And not only has it been dry, but it's been warm as well. On the left-hand side, we see the average air temperature departure from normal between November to January. And on the right-hand side, the departure between February through April. So between November through January, we saw air temperatures between 3 and 5 degrees warmer than normal. A little less so for the period February through April, but still, the main takeaway here is that it's been warmer than normal. So dry and warm. And I don't know if anybody has seen these yet, but NOAA just released information that looked at the climate normals for the nation for both temperature and precipitation. So these maps here look at 30-year normals compared with the 20th century average temperature. So the takeaway here is you can see with each 30-year period that temperatures are warming compared to the average and have become particularly warm in the 2 most recent 30-year periods. So if you break that down and look at just New Hampshire, you can see that the average annual air temperature is increasing over the 20th century average. So it's increasing by about 0.2 degrees Fahrenheit per decade. And if we break it down further to 6-month periods in New Hampshire, representing the fall and winter and spring and summer, sorry, my cat is joining us. We see the October through March, here we go, October through March, an increase in air temperatures of 0.3 degrees Fahrenheit per decade. For the period April through September, we see an increase in air temperatures of 0.2 degrees Fahrenheit per decade. So both periods are warming, with the fall and winter period warming a little faster than the spring and summer period. And so what are we seeing for precipitation? If you look at the 30-year periods compared with the 20th century average, you see a similar trend of generally wetter conditions in the 2 most recent 30-year periods here. So again, if you break this down annually for New Hampshire, you see that we have an increase in annual precipitation over time over the average, and that increase is about 0.6 inches per decade. Further, if we break this down into 6-month periods, You see that for October through March, an increase in precipitation of 0.29 inches per decade. And we actually see the same increase for the April through September period. So both periods are experiencing the same rate of increase. So just for fun, and I'm not showing these graphics here, I took a look at which months were experiencing the greatest rates of change in temperature and precipitation. So December and February, those are the months where temperature change is greatest, meaning these months are warming more rapidly. For precipitation, October and December are the months where precipitation change is greatest, meaning these months are becoming wetter more rapidly. And so if you think about December, because it's becoming both warmer and wetter, most likely that precipitation is falling as rainfall and sleet or freezing rain and not always snowfall. So going back to our ice cover graphic, it may be no surprise that our lakes are experiencing reduced periods of ice cover, with later ice on and earlier ice out, along with likely reduced ice thickness. If you're interested in digging into this data a little bit more, you can certainly hop onto the NOAA site referenced here and through most of these slides to get a little more information. So that's sort of the recap on the historical changes. So what's the prediction for this summer? Just like the historical data, the warmer and wetter forecast holds. So NOAA is forecasting above average temperatures to continue in May, June, and July. And hopefully we may actually see a bit more precipitation than normal because they are predicting above average precipitation. So however, we all know that anything can happen. This is New Hampshire after all. So what might this mean for our lakes this summer? Well, as we know, we're starting the season in drought and abnormally dry conditions. Due to the lack of winter snowpack, spring snowmelt, and less precipitation, some lakes are already experiencing low water levels and have not completely filled from winter drawdowns. Ice out was earlier, particularly in lakes in the southern portion of the state. Earlier ice out generally means longer growing seasons for aquatic plants, algae, and cyanobacteria. It also means that thermal stratifications in our deeper lakes set up earlier. This could lead to extended periods of anoxia in hypolimnetic waters, which could have detrimental effects on internal phosphorus loading for some lakes. As a matter of fact, I've already seen a pond with hypolimnetic anoxia in May of this year. The concern with this is the potential for more severe internal phosphorus loading, combined with warmer water temperatures, which often fuels cyanobacteria growth. So be on the lookout for cyanobacteria growth earlier this season. For some lakes, drought conditions have actually proven favorable as the lack of precipitation means less stormwater runoff and less external phosphorus loading. So for some lakes, we may continue to see improved water quality from drought conditions this year. But as always, nothing is easy to predict, and you really are our eyes and our ears out there. I know we tell you that all the time, but if you see anything unusual, you just let us know. Don't hesitate to contact us. So moving on to a couple of new items in 2021. I'm not going to spend too much time on these. I'll touch on them at the next session. So what's new in 2021? So we have a new website. So DES has a new website and VLAP has a new web page. The ultimate goal of the new site was to make navigation to what you're interested in easier. So far, we really have, received mixed reviews, but change never is easy. So I encourage you really to go onto the new webpage, check it out, and if you have any comments or suggestions, please let me know. So starting actually last summer, we demoed a new scheduling software called PickTime. So you can schedule your appointments online here. So that means you can schedule pickups, drop-offs, biologist visits, and even our newest offering of virtual biologist visits or virtual audits, all on the scheduling software. So I'm really asking you this summer to try and use this software to schedule everything that you need to schedule. You'll go in there, schedule, you get confirmation emails from me and from PickTime. And so it's really a nice, easy way to keep everything organized on a day-to-day basis. And virtual audits or virtual biologist visits. So yes, that's right. Instead of in-person biologist visits, virtual visits will be offered for those groups that might need a little more flexibility in sampling. So say you can't sample at 10 a.m., but you could sample at 2 p.m. You can have a biologist, visit you virtually at 2 for that. You might not feel, maybe you don't feel comfortable having a biologist visit in person this year, totally understandable. So you can also choose this option. Or maybe you just need a brief refresher in sampling process, or maybe you have something you'd like to show a biologist. And if we can't get there in person, you can always schedule one of these to sort of show show one of us an exotic aquatic plant or an algal bloom or another problem. So you can always schedule a virtual visit. So if you're interested in scheduling virtual visits, just let me know and I can sort of walk you through the process and get that scheduled for you. And so that is it for our updates. I guess I'll go, Amy, do you have any questions?
Yes, Sarah, we do have a question. Will the scheduling software work for the Colby-Sawyer Lab lakes?
That's a really good question. So right now we have not pushed it out to the Colby-Sawyer lakes. So those lakes that are using the Colby-Sawyer lab will still have to schedule directly with Terrico.
Okay, that is the only question I see for you, but there are also many thank yous and kudos for all of your good work. So there's a long list of those.
Thank you. All right, so let me see. I'm gonna stop this. All right, I had to pull up my other presentation, so let me see how easy this is going to be. And okay, so can we see this?
We've got it, Sarah.
Perfect, great. So now the moment you have all been waiting for. It's our favorite portion of the workshop. So it's our Volunteer Limnologist and Secchi Disc Awards. We're really pleased to be able to present these awards in 2021, although we would love to be able to do it in person. Just we haven't been able to do this for the past couple of years, so this is really special. And we want to make sure all of you, all of our awardees are recognized for their contributions. So we're going to start with the Volunteer Limnologist awardees from 2019 to the present, and then we'll move on to our Secchi Disc awardees. We'll actually hear from some of our awardees tonight and their nominators, and I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to celebrate their contributions, but also understand that you all deserve recognition. So the state is so fortunate to have such an amazing group of dedicated individuals and lake associations that take on this role to preserve and protect our valuable resources. Because really each time that you go out on your lake to collect a water quality sample, survey for aquatic plants, conduct an oxygen or temperature profile, perform ice out sampling, or monitor for cyanobacteria, you are the limnologist of your lake. So tonight our award nominees are evaluated based upon their years of service in VLAP, their years of service in other programs such as Weed Watchers or Lake Host programs, involvement with advanced sampling, involvement in community education and outreach about lake quality and watershed management issues, and involvement in watershed management planning and investigations. So without further ado, let's recognize our volunteer limnologists tonight. So our first awardees for the 2019 Volunteer Limnologist Award goes to Dick and Josie Warner at Norway Pond in Hancock. So they have been monitoring the pond monthly for over 15 years, and in recent years, the Norway Pond Commission was established. They jumped aboard volunteering without hesitation to assist with several advanced sampling projects. Some very interesting work, such as ground penetrating radar surveys, bathymetric mapping, lake level monitoring, and oxygen 18 and deuterium sampling in 2018. So one other thing, let's not forget to recognize their black lab, Monty, for his work on deterring Canada geese from the pond shoreline and beach area. So thank you and congratulations, Dick and Josie. So next, our 2020 awardees. So our first recipient is Brian Campbell of Webster Lake in Franklin. And here's what Brian had to say.
Go. Hi, my name is Brian. I've been up here almost 20 years on this beautiful lake, and once I started joining the Webster Lake Association to help keep the water clean and got involved with their activities, I realized that the lake doesn't stay clean by itself. It needs workers, it needs volunteers, and the great thing about the state of New Hampshire is they have great programs to help keep their precious waters clean. And without that, who knows what would happen. And I hope my small part in dealing with the association is help the Webster Lake in its goal. And I would like to thank Sarah for recognizing me for this award.
All right, Brian, thank you so much. And here's what Brian's nominator had to say. So Brian is a dedicated volunteer, passionate about the health of Webster Lake. He was one of the original VLAP volunteers for Webster Lake. His expertise with the sampling experience is unmatched. He makes sure we are using the equipment in the proper way and is the secretary for the excursions as he fills out all the paperwork. I have only been along on these excursions for 2 summers, but have nicknamed Brian the Man due to his experience and knowledge of all of the aspects of water testing procedures. As a newcomer to this process, he has given me the history of Webster Lake's water testing. Thank you, Brian. We applaud your hard work. Our next recipient is John Bergeron of Cannon Street Lake. So John annually contacts Amy and I to borrow the VLAP and Exotics display boards and educational information for annual Lake Association meetings, making sure that anyone with questions on these subjects has resources to answer them. For this and many more reasons, John is receiving this award. Here's what his nominator had to say.
Hi, I'm Karen Henry, President of Canaan Lake Association. Our association is very pleased that the state is recognizing John Bergeron with this award. John has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the preservation of the water quality of Canaan Street Lake for many years. His leadership and his educational outreach within the community has significantly contributed to the health of our beautiful lake.
Thank you, Karen. And so let's also hear from John.
Thank you, Karen, for the nomination, and thank you to DES for the award. Thank you to Sarah and Tariko, who have provided wonderful education and support over the years. I have learned much about sampling, threats, controls, and outreach. Many volunteers, along with DES, LSPA, and Canaan Lake Association, have had an important role in preserving and protecting our lake. It is a pleasure to be on the lake collecting samples with fellow volunteers. Thank you for the award.
Thank you, John. We really look forward to many more years working with you. And now our 2021 recipients. I like to call these two my unsung heroes. They religiously and quietly go about their water quality sampling with a keen eye for anything that might be changing or changing over time. They're curious how these water bodies respond to changes that they're seeing. Checking in with me to make sure they understand what's happening and providing updates on current issues when they happen. So our first recipient is Mike Poole at Armington Lake in Piermont. For those of you not sure where Piermont is, it's over an hour north of Concord, which takes a time commitment to maintain a monthly monitoring program during the summer. And Mike has been doing this for 20 years now. So not only does Mike collect monthly samples at Armington Lake and transport those to and from Plymouth or Concord, he also assists other area lakes with monitoring when needed. So Mike recently completed a project to post historical water quality reports to the association's website, which required countless hours consolidating and annotating historical water quality data. So thank you, Mike, your commitment to Armington Lake and your years of VLAP monitoring. And last but not least is John Hamilton at Tom Pond in Warner. So I selected John for this award for his unwavering commitment to monitoring Tom Pond. So he has been the one constant throughout 34 years of Tom Pond participation in VLAP. He has not missed a month of sampling and has not asked for any recognition in return. He has a keen understanding of lake ecology and water quality, which he passes on to residents. He reports anything unusual or that he feels might be detrimental to the health of the pond, surveying lake levels and beaver activity at the outlet and looking for exotic species. So congratulations, John. You are more than deserving of this award. So next we'll move into our Secchi Disc Awards, and congratulations to all of our volunteer limnologists. So the Secchi Disc Awards are awarded to volunteers or lake associations that truly go above and beyond to ensure the health of their lake or pond. From developing watershed management plans, managing exotic species infestations, to assisting with research efforts, our next recipients have stood out from the pack. So we have two winners for 2019. So here they are. Our first is Meryl Lewis of Pine Island Pond in Manchester. So here's what Meryl's nominator had to say.
Meryl began monitoring Pine Island Pond as a VLAP volunteer beginning in the year 2000 when the Manchester Urban Ponds Restoration Program began. Meryl monitored Pine Island Pond largely as a one-man show until 2018 when he passed the baton, or YSI 550A, Secchi Disc, and ViewScope to his successor. So Meryl was involved in VLAP for 19 seasons of water quality and aquatic vegetation monitoring as a weed watcher. During this time, Meryl also initiated the Pine Island Pond Environmental Society, bringing his neighbors together to talk about issues such as water quality monitoring, invasive aquatic species, non-point source pollution, stormwater runoff, and more. During this time, Meryl was also instrumental in locating and identifying a variable milfoil infestation at Pine Island Pond and was involved in coordinating meetings and review of the management plan. By the way, if you don't know Merrill, he is indeed a cool cat. He is president of the New England Moxie Congress, has a Moxie museum in his basement, and recently published a book on the Love It or Hate It New England Nerve Tonic. The original Moxie Bottle House was situated on Pine Island Pond next to Merrill's, and he helped facilitate efforts to have it shipped to Maine and restored to its historic glory. Given the Manchester Urban Pond Restoration Program's 20th anniversary last year, Merrill's 19 seasons of volunteer assistance, and his recent celebration of his 80th trip around the sun, it was with pleasure that I nominated Merrill for this much-deserved award and congratulate him on receiving it. Thank you so much, Merrill, and congratulations.
Yes, thank you, Merrill, and congratulations. Thank you for your service to VLAP. Our next recipient is the Canobie Lake Protective Association. And so, yes, the Canobie Lake, so where we probably have all visited either as children, teens, parents, grandparents, aunts or uncles. Most of us are familiar with Canobie Lake. But what most of us don't know is that Canobie Lake also serves as a drinking water supply for the town of Salem. The Canobie Lake Protective Association has been actively monitoring water quality since 2002 and has participated in many special projects to protect this valuable resource. They assisted the state with an intensive study on conductivity and chloride levels and continue to conduct enhanced monitoring. They continue to be actively involved in how the I-93 expansion through the town impacts water quality. They completed a watershed drainage study evaluating stormwater impacts on the lake, and they continuously provide the most up-to-date education and outreach to watershed residents. For this and so much more, we award you with the 2019 Secchi Disc Award. Congratulations. And our 2020 Secchi Disc awardees need no introduction to many of us involved with water quality, exotic species, and cyanobacteria monitoring. They have been at the forefront of these issues and remain dedicated lake enthusiasts. So our 2020 Secchi Disc Award winners are Marge and Dave Thorpe of Wickwass Lake, or Lake Wickwass in Meredith. They have been VLAP monitors since 1997. They have actively participated in just about every program available to lakes in New Hampshire. Water quality sampling, weed watching, lake hosting, monitoring the dam and water levels, cyanobacteria monitoring, loon preservation committee involvement, and loon banding, to their most recent efforts of actually assisting researchers from UNH with an environmental DNA project focused on the Chinese mystery snail, and they did that during a pandemic. The Thorpes have done it all, not to mention that they used to sample from a steamboat, which is pretty cool. And let's not forget Marge's Don't Pee in My Pond poem. So thank you both. And let's hear from the Thorpes.
Hello everyone, this is Marge and Dave Thorpe from Lake Wickwass in Meredith. We're so pleased with receiving this award. We really appreciate it, and we're feeling very honored by it. Thank you.
We've learned about water quality from Sarah Steiner and invasive species from Amy Smagula, and we thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you, Marge and Dave. And finally, our 2021 Secchi Disc Award winner is Glenn and Jane Bowles from Robinson Pond in Hudson. So under Glenn and Jane's watchful eyes, Robinson Pond VLAP monitoring is one of the best coordinated within the program. They spend considerable time and effort to train teams of volunteers collecting tributary samples to ensure the best possible data are collected. That includes having each team complete paperwork with detailed notes on tributary conditions as well as procedure checklists. They have been involved with advanced sampling and stream bracketing to try and identify potential pollutant sources within the watershed. And they are committed to both water quality as well as exotic plant management activities. They often survey and report new areas of growth to DES and share this information with other residents. They are more than willing to provide DES seasonal interns with a canoe and access to the pond to conduct follow-up sampling after exotic plant treatments. For these reasons and many more, congratulations to Glenn and Jane for their tireless efforts monitoring Robinson Pond. And the Bulls wanted to make sure they also recognized their success would not be without the dependability of 3 longtime volunteers who sampled the tributaries and 2 additional longtime volunteers that complete the deep spot sampling. They have met and worked with wonderful neighbors and friends who share their interest in protecting the pond. And they feel fortunate to have enjoyed all 4 seasons on Robinson Pond for 45 years. So thank you, Glenn and Jane, and congratulations. So remember, if you know of a deserving volunteer or lake association, please don't hesitate to nominate them for the 2022 Volunteer Limnologist and Secchi Disc Awards. Thank you all for your commitment to our lakes. And so I'm going to leave you here tonight with Marge Thorpe's Don't Pee in My Pond. So please take a minute and read. And while you're reading that, I'll ask Amy if we have any questions.
I am not seeing any questions, Sarah, but I'm also not seeing your screen, but that might just be me.
Uh-oh.
If you want to try sharing it.
Oh my goodness. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
How many slides may I not have been sharing? Quite a few?
It was just a couple, but I think it was more personal when you were on the screen reading out the awards.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, so this really concludes our program this evening. So thank you all for joining us. We just appreciate everything that you do for our lakes in New Hampshire, and we're just pleased to be able to have this offered tonight and to have the other sessions. So hopefully we will see you in person in 2022. But I do look forward to seeing you in the lab this summer and seeing some of you on our lakes. So thank you and have a good night.